Thank you for downloading this episode of the History of the World in 100 Objects from GHHJ Radio 3.
The world will note that the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, a military base. We won the race of discovery against the Germans. We have used it in order to shorten the agony of war, in order to save the lives of thousands and thousands of young Americans. We shall continue to use it until we completely destroy Japan's power to make war.
On August 9th, 1945, President Truman delivers a radio address to the American people. He refers to the atomic bombing in Hiroshima. He claims that the United States would not cease the use of atomic bombs on Japan until they have surrendered. He states that this is to shorten the agony of war and save thousands and thousands of lives of young America. But what agony is shortened when the most deadly weapon in the history of weapons is used to detonate an entire city? Whose lives are saved when actually hundreds of thousands of lives are killed? Today's object refuses to glorify the war and the way it has been won, but reflects the inhumane tragedy that the nuclear weapons have brought. This artifact is known as Shin's tricycle, and although it might not seem for a tricycle to be the best representation of one of humanity's worst catastrophes, there is a deeper meaning to it than just a children's toy. Shinichi Tetsutani, the owner of the tricycle, was killed at the age of 3 by the atomic bomb in Hiroshima. The story was published as a children's book by a survivor from the perspective of the
Then
father.
all of a sudden, the bomb detonated. Everything went black, and I thought the world ended. Our family tried to look for Shinichi and Kimi immediately after the attack, and we found him pinned under a house beam. His face was swollen and bleeding, but his tiny hands still gripped onto the handles of the tricycle. He pleaded for water, but everyone I saw that drank water were dying. I did not dare give him any, and his pleading and pain tore my heart. Shin did not survive that night.
Shin's tricycle is a legacy that reminds future generations of the horrors that nuclear warfare can bring. Casualties from the bombings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined to 230,000 people, while many of the survivors suffered from increased cancer rates, birth defects, and damage onto brain development. Nearly 70% of 90,000 buildings were destroyed, ground temperatures reached 4,000 degrees Celsius, and radioactive rain poured from the dark sky. All these appalling consequences are summarized in Shin's tricycle, a young and innocent soul obliterated by the world hatred and avarice. The bombing of Nagasaki put an end to the use of nuclear weapons to this day, which is a good indication of efforts to prevent another disastrous warfare. In 1958, nearly 10,000 scientists presented to the United Nations Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld a petition that begged, "We deem it imperative that immediate action be taken to effect an international agreement to stop testing of all nuclear weapons." However, countries not only saw horror, but also the potential power one could wield with the nuclear weapons. The United States and the Soviet Union entered into an arms race during the Cold War, competing against each other to develop more and stronger weapons. This would eventually lead to the Cuban Missile Crisis, the closest to a nuclear warfare that the world has ever got since World War II. Each country's lined up missiles with nuclear warheads in front of the doorsteps of each opposing borders. Fortunately, the conflict was well resolved as the United States agreed to respect Cuban sovereignty and the Soviet Union removed the missiles. Since the Cuban Missile Crisis, there has not been a case where two countries aimed at each other nuclear weapons. However, many argue that the present day is well in danger of nuclear threats as much as the world used to be back in the Cold War. In 1945, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists came up with an imaginary clock called the Doomsday Clock, which represented the time left until midnight, an imagery of apocalypse, and the idiom of nuclear explosion, the countdown to zero. The Doomsday Clock was initially set to 7 minutes before midnight on 1947, and has been fluctuating both ways ever since. There are 2 cases in which the clock has been set 2 minutes before midnight, the closest it has ever got. One of them was in 1953, as both the United States and the Soviet Union succeeded in developing a second-generation nuclear bomb much stronger than the original atomic bomb, the hydrogen bomb. The second time at which the doomsday clock has been set closest to midnight is most dauntingly the present year, 2018. The Bulletin of Atomic Sciences fear the reckless language by Donald Trump, North Korean and Russian developments of nuclear weapons, and many more factors. Humanity will most definitely meet its doomsday once a nuclear warfare begins, and it must strive to prevent it to its utmost abilities. Humanity must struggle to remember the tragedies of the past, as Shin's tricycle reminds us. Shin's death not only reminds us of the horrors of nuclear warfare, but also the remaining hope humanity has and will always have till the end, just like his tiny hands holding onto the handles of the tricycle. We cannot turn back time to bring back Shin, but we can turn back time on the doomsday clock, so that we do not lose any more innocent lives like Shin's.